Okay, so we're gonna get into the meat, potatoes, the good stuff now, all right? So listen, the key part about when you lose yourself, that's, you look at the word lose yourself. Well, what's that mean? Well, it means I don't have something about myself. And what is that, this something that I lost about myself? Well, it's a perceptual sense of owning what you think in your head, what you feel in your body and how you interpret it, and what you emotionally experience and own it. In other words, from the inside out, I know what I think, I know what I feel, I know what my feelings have in regards to my interpretation to what they mean to me, and my emotional experiences I have, I know what those are all about. So this is kind of like part 3, I guess, of primary emotions. And I really want you, and hopefully I can transfer over to you guys by watching this idea. And you'll want to probably watch these 3 videos or this video series on primary emotions a few times to absorb it. I do apologize because I'm sick and my brain's a little foggy, but I'm kind of in the swing of wanting to do this for you, this video. So I want to make sure that you really follow what I'm talking about, okay? So primary emotions are in the body, neck down, because I just react in them. I just own them, I'm already in them, and they tell me lots of good information about my sense of self if I have this thing called mindfulness. And my feelings are in my head because I usually have scriptings attached to them. Now the question is, or thought processes attached to my feelings as I try to figure out why I'm feeling what I feel like today. Now, there's a bit of a mystery in just that little part there, because am I feeling what I think, or what am I interpreting in my thinking process what I'm feeling about myself today, or what I'm hearing in the scripts in my head about my feelings, are those even mine, or there's somebody else? So in other words, if I wake up and I'm kind of sad in the morning, and or I'm tired in the morning, and it kind of drains me a little bit, so I have a perception of a bit of a sadness about me today. Does that mean there's anything wrong with me today? Not at all. It just means the state I'm in this morning happens to be that I'm tired and I'm a bit sad today. And I'm probably sad because of some kind of issue that's probably a valid issue to be sad about. However, my interpretation, the way my brain used to do that, because I had to be happy all the time, was there was something wrong with me because I was sad or I was down. In other words, there's a marked measurement and weighed perception of myself. So I want to kind of evolve this a little bit for you, okay? So I'm going to give you a little story, another little story. I like stories. Say I'm 5 years old again, and I'm in a house, and I'm at home. And as a little 5-year-old, I hear something in the house, and my ears kind of perk up because it's familiar to me. And I'm listening really with intent. What is that sound I'm hearing? And it sounds like crying. Now, as a 5-year-old, I know what crying is because I have cried myself. And not only do I know what crying is, I have experienced crying. And not only have I experienced crying, I know what crying looks like. So, and those are kind of like basic powers that we have. What I see is what I see. In other words, when I've seen myself crying, I know when I'm crying because I looked at myself in a mirror or maybe a reflection of a window as I was crying, and I saw tears coming down, and that told me that I was crying. On top of that, I'm sad. I have a sad sense in my body, and on top of that, I make a noise as I cry, which I hear in my auditorial system. Those are all validating that I'm definitely crying. Now, with that piece of information that I know from my own life experience as a five-year-old, I negotiate through the house, and I track down where the crying is coming from. And I walk into the living room and follow the sound of the crying, and here it's my mother. And I look over and I can see that she's crying in the living room. And as she's crying in the living room, I see her do this, oh geez, like this. And as soon as she does this, oh geez, like this, I say, Mommy, are you okay? And Mommy says, yeah, Leon, it's okay. It's just Mom's arthritis. I'll be all right though. Everything's fine. Okay? So I want to unravel that a little bit for you. So what has happened there? I'm 5 years old. And the first thing I'm starting to experience, or one of the primary emotions I feel at that time, when all of a sudden I see crying and then a reinforcer of my mom being hurt. I don't know she's not hurting. I see her being hurt because she's in pain and her face is gone, oh geez, like that. And I can sense that, remember? I can feel the environment up to 25 feet away. So what's happened automatically in my body, my primary emotion of fear kicks in because I don't know what's going on. Thus I ask my mom, Mommy, are you okay? And then Mommy says to me, yeah, it's just my arthritis. Mommy will be okay. Now that's important for a little kid to hear that, because then I don't feel something in regards to responsible for her situation. She's keeping the adult world separate from the kid's world, and I get to feel my fear. There you go again. I get to experience my fear, and as this plays out, I get to experience the emotion of fear in my body, what I think about it, and how I feel about it, and with that process, I come up with understanding, oh, this is fear, this is what this means, and I'm still okay. In other words, I don't take on chronic fear because Mom is on there. But when Mom gives me reassurance, then I go into a secondary emotion, which is primary emotion, which is sadness. And sadness, the reason why I go to sadness is because now that I know everything's okay in regards to fear, I go to a relaxed state and then I reflect. I'm owning all of this. What I think about the situation, what I think about how I feel about that situation, what I think about how I feel and emotionally experience that situation. Don't have anybody telling me to do that. I'm just in my world, in my process with those three. They're not regulators as much as kind of like drivers, computing driving forces in your body that are automatically kicking in, and I get to connect myself to all three of those things and what I think about it. So as I move to sadness, I'm not sad in regards to, not all sadness has to be with a deep sense of regret and sorrow. Sadness can also lead you into another kind of form of state, which is what's called empathy. Empathy. So what does that mean? Well, remember, I saw my mom, I went into fear automatically, and then once Mom narrated what happened, I heard what she had said, I thought, okay, that's okay. I moved to sadness because I don't like seeing my mom hurt, which moved me up to a feeling called empathy, and then from that feeling of empathy, I moved to a secondary feeling called compassion. And in that compassion, I thought about, I think I'll do something nice for Mom because I want to let her know I love her. I can't change that she was hurting today, but I can show her that I love her. Okay? And then what that is an act. So I do an act, and that's of kindness. So my sadness leads me to empathy because I love my mom. And that empathy leads me to compassion, which makes me do an act to reinforce to my mom how much I love her. And so what do I do with that? Well, what I do with that is I go out in the yard, and there's all these flowers out in the yard. I pick all these flowers, and I come back in, and that's what I do is I bring my mom in flowers. A whole bouquet of flowers. Okay, so hopefully you guys followed that. Sorry if my writing's messy there. Now, I just want to recap what's going on here. Remember, I'm 5 years old. But the thing about being a 5-year-old, and I have this nice, great programming system that we're all born with, is in my own experience of my fear and my sadness and my empathy and my compassion, I'm experiencing all those emotions and all those feelings, but the important part about it is I'm interpreting what they mean to me. It's very important that you get that. I'm interpreting what my fear, sadness, my feelings of empathy and compassion mean to me. And not only that, I'm owning them so they're available in my body to move me up and through a process to have resolution that I feel good about. It's a feedback loop for myself so I can actually own my sadness, my fear, my empathy, and my compassion that I own. I understand them. They might not feel all that great sometimes in my body, but what my body does know is even if they don't feel that great, I have these things called feelings, which is your secondary backups, that my body can use to bring me back to a relaxed state. And I know this now, okay? So what do I know what to do with my sadness or my fear is wait, get information. When I get the information, I'm updated. It's okay, mommy's gonna be okay. I move to sadness. Why? Because I love my mom, which moves me to a feeling of empathy and compassion, and I do an act of kindness, and I get my mom some flowers, and I run back in and surprise her and say, here's a whole bunch of flowers for you, Mom. I just want to let you know I love you. Oh, Leon, that's awesome. I'm so glad you did that for me. She kisses me. I get a reward system, which reboots this whole process of, that was a good thing for me. I understand it. I experience my feelings, my emotions, my thinking, my process about it, and I reflect on it, and I do the act of what I think I should do, and it's a great thing for me. Now that's a program. That just programmed a whole bunch of great information. My emotional information got updated, my feelings got updated, my thoughts about myself got upgraded, my thoughts about my emotions got upgraded, because I own it now, these primary emotions, or at least introduce them. Remember, I'm not in a perfect family right now. This is just a good, healthy scenario of what should have happened if I lived in a lollipop world of great love and compassion and empathy and all this other kind of stuff, okay? But most of this I wasn't operating out of. I had to grow back into this. Okay, so the important part about this is I own my sadness, my fear, my empathy, my compassion, my feelings of empathy and compassion, and my emotions down here. Why do I mean that? I'm gonna rag on you a bit on this. Is because I experienced them. It was me in my head. I was interpreting all of these different fronts, emotions, feelings, and my thinking, and I owned it all, which put them together. That's why I always talk about your 4 states. When they're all put together, you're solid. Your witnessing self, your capacity to hear your thoughts in your head, megacognition, as I mentioned before, the capacity to think about something as you think about it and reflect on what you're thinking about. So you can hear your thoughts in your head, feel your feelings in your body, feel your feelings and scripts in your mind, and experience your emotions in your body. When I own all that because I was given a soil to experience it all, and over repetitive experiences, I own it more and more, and I become solid more and more. Okay, so I'll show you how that gets kind of wonky after a while. So there's a thing called, remember, like with disgust is to protect us from being influenced, perceptually influenced from outside sources. And those outside sources can come to us in a variety of ways. And if they're not healthy ways, they fuse us with being confused And we don't quite know what to do, so we do what we think we should act like we should do, which isn't the same as this side here where I own it. I'm now acting what I think I should do, not being who I am, like this side, okay? So how would that happen? Well, another way of looking at it is, I'm going to put a little kind of sensor here. What this is basically what's called an outside declaration. Now, what do I mean by an outside declaration? An outside declaration is something that we hear from outside ourselves that is declared to us that we need to do something about. So I'll give you and that's usually an external scripting from a parent to your child, and now the child hears it and uses it to somehow regulate an event or an experience. So an outside declaration is like a filter, and everything starts going through that filter. So when I was younger, at 5, my dad turned to me. Again, this is hypothetical, but it gives you the idea. And he turns to me and he says, take care of your mother because she's got rheumatoid arthritis. Now, he could have said it a different way. He could have said, hey, you guys, brought all the kids together. You know, mom's having a hard time with her arthritis, and it would really be helpful if you guys could help her out. And if she asks you to do something, if you don't mind doing that. See how that's in a freeing way, so I can make a choice about the action? And if I can make a choice about the action, that means I'm choosing to do it this side of the board. Unlike, you kids take care of your mother because she's got rheumatoid arthritis. Now what that is actually called is, it's a kind of a form of, what's the word I'm looking for? What my father's basically doing there is doing emotional transference to us. He is incapable of having a relationship with his own wife because he struggles with alcoholism. So he's obviously got some dynamics going inside of his own body. So he transfers his responsibility by making a declaration to us, to you. The reason why I'm laughing there is you should never point at people unless you're a little kid in a picture that points and says to you, you have great worth. For the babes of innocence. But when a parent says that to you and he points at you, the problem with that, he has declared it to you. Okay, and then once they declare it to you, you now carry that script in your head, which becomes a filter in regards to coming over your perception of life and how you feel about yourself, because that declaration gets skewed a little bit from our perspective as the receiver of that declaration. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So my dad would say the declaration, take care of your mother, she's got rheumatoid arthritis. He's transferring over his guilt of responsibility to us because he doesn't have the capacity to know how to negotiate and be there for her. So now we carry that. And that comes into our body as what's called guilt and responsibility. Guilt and responsibility. Now you notice it's on this side of the board. Now I need to have my own feelings about guilt and my own feelings about responsibility. But that's the key part. They're my feelings, my perceptions, my thoughts about what I should feel guilty about and what I should feel responsible for. Not what you think I should feel guilty about and what you think I should feel responsible for. But as soon as I hear this declaration, I don't get a chance to practice this like I do these other ones, because then now it goes through this filter of my dad's declaration to me. You better take care of your mother because she's got rheumatoid arthritis. So every time I do stuff, I have to do it using guilt and responsibility. In other words, I'm obligated. I must at all cost. I must move forward, even if I don't want to move forward. You've heard this phrase. People say to you, parents will say this to you sometimes too, or you might even say this as a parent to your kids. Well, don't you think? See, as soon as you say that question, remember you ask them a question, as soon as you say, don't you think, what you're saying to me as the receiver of that question is, I should think the way you think. So what if I don't think the way you think? Is that okay? Because usually what happens is I better think the way you think, because now what comes into my body is the feeling of guilt and responsibility, which means I can't say no. So in one of the courses we do a little exercise where we talk about 1 day a week you pick, this week coming up, you can do this as an assignment this week if you guys like, and you say no to every request that comes your way, and as you do that, you be mindful of what your body does. Do you feel bad? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel responsible? Or do you have a right to say no? Now in that exercise, some of you are working in that, so you have to just answer people, but you can say no, but what you want to do is learn that you have a choice when you say no. And it doesn't mean that you say yes right away. What it means is you first have to feel, can I say no to the world? My boss, my closest friend, my lover. Because if I can't say no, then what's more likely is I got a codependency problem I better start negotiating and navigating with. But as I say no, as soon as someone asks me, hey Leon, can you help me move this weekend? No, I can't do that. Well, how come? Well, I just can't. I don't have to explain myself. And I sit in that. And it's going to feel awkward. Because I didn't know I could say no to the world, because I must move forward at all cost. I can always come back later and phone them up and say, hey, I was thinking about what you asked me earlier to do, and I said no earlier, but actually I think I can do that. But I'm not going to do it out of guilt and responsibility. I'm going to do it out of empathy and compassion. Can I do the difference in the two? Because I have choice now. When I get that little bit of revelation, you mean I can say no, Leon, to the world? Yes! Yes, you can! But there'll be a huge implication. Well, let's see if there is. And let's see the weight of the feelings and emotions you're putting on this so-called implication that's going to happen to you, if it's at that level or not. In most cases, the answer will be no, it won't be. But you have a right to say no. If I can't say no, I don't have my anger available to me. No, I don't want to do that. No, no, no. It's a stage of development, terrible twos. No, 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 no. Mine, 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 mine. Sorry guys, my throat's going a bit. It's not that 2-year-olds are trying to be defiant. Don't you be disobedient to me. They're not being disobedient to you. They're in a stage of development where they're learning about being able to know the difference between me, and you. And I can say no. It's brutal to us as parents, because sometimes you just go a little, listen to me, but you got to remember that's not what's happening from their minds. They don't have adult minds. They have kids' minds that are still developing, and those neural net pathways are still negotiating and connecting and stretching. They're getting the right to practice this space at that young age, and we need to provide that for them. So let me show you another scenario here. Because I'm now carrying my dad's declaration to take care of my mom, the next time I hear my mom and she's crying and her arthritis breaks up and she goes, geez, like this, I go to fear, and then I go to sadness, but then I hear dad's script in my head. Because obviously dad told me to do something and I didn't do it. I'm 5. I'm not a doctor, but I'm certainly guilty now because I didn't do what Dad said, not knowing that there's nothing I can do because I'm not a doctor. I know nothing about rheumatoid arthritis. See, over here I knew what to do for me as a 5-year-old, and it worked quite nicely for me to educate that. But I'm not operating with me here. I'm operating with this declaration now. That's now in here. And now I feel guilt and I feel responsibility. Now the difference between this side again and this side is I own this whole side. These emotions, these feelings, and what I think about them. So there's no judgment, no marked, no measurement, no weighed. And I mentioned this to you guys before about you have to negotiate with yourself a different way. Stop carrying right or wrong, good or bad. That's on this side because of declarations we're carrying in our head. And move to learning. This is all about learning. I own it. I'm in free world here. I'm not in free world here. I'm in bondage because I'm being marked, measured, and weighed by a script or declaration I now carry in my head, by a source that I'm dependent on outside of myself. So what does that do to my body? What does that do to my feelings and my emotions? Give me 1 second. I need a throat lozenge. Okay, sorry about that, you guys. So what does that do? Well, remember, over here I'm feeling my feelings, experiencing my emotions, and thinking my thoughts on all of that stuff that's taking place. And it feels freeing. It feels familiar now. It doesn't feel awkward. It feels familiar because I felt my fear. I felt my sadness. I felt the feelings of my empathy, my feelings of compassion. And I felt the motivational energy of that, moving to do an act to go get my mom some flowers from the yard so I could give it to her. And it made her happy. And that was all good. Okay? But now, because I'm carrying a declaration from my father that says, take care of your mom, I have this other two feelings. Now remember, I need to have guilt and I need to have responsibility, but I need it on this side. In other words, I know what my guilt is. I know what my responsibility is, and it's freeing to me, and I'm familiar with them. But because I haven't been introduced to these yet, like this scenario over here where I got a chance to practice it, I'm now pushed into dealing with it. And because I'm now pushed into dealing with it via the declaration Dad has said, take care of your mother, she's got rheumatoid arthritis, declaring that onto me, this feeling and this feeling feel awkward. Now remember, over here, these feelings, when I first felt fear for my mom's situation she was in, and then sadness, felt uncomfortable for me, but I had the soil environment to own it, practice it, negotiate it, feel it, interpret it, and understand it, and to know what to do about it. And I came up with that all with my little 5-year-old self, because the environment on that side for that event was an open soil. But because I carry Dad's declaration in my head now through my auditorial ears, it's turned into closed soil. So these feelings feel awkward. So the next time I see my mom and she flares up, I go to fear, not because mom's upset, but because I wasn't there for her, because of the declaration. I go into sadness, not because I love my mom, but because I'm in trouble, which moves me up to feeling guilt, these are all awkward now in my body. And I also feel responsibility, because I don't know what to do with this, because I'm not carrying my perception. My captain is my conscious availability about myself and what I think about it. I'm now carrying another captain's responsibility, declaring to me something that I don't know how to negotiate and navigate. So I actually move up here and I feel bad. And bad, responsible, and guilty makes me feel awkward. Not ownership, awkwardship. And I need to do something about that, feeling awkward. So what do you think I go do? I go get my mom some flowers. Now, why do I go get my mom some flowers? Well, first of all, my body does have a reference point. I felt really good when I got mom flowers last time for her. I'm hoping I'm going to change these awkward feelings and emotions in my body and feeling bad about myself because I let down Dad's declaration by getting flowers. Now the question I ask people is, are you getting flowers for you? Or are you getting flowers for your mom? People kind of wrestle with it for a bit. Well, you're getting flowers for your mom. Okay, why? Because you don't want her to hurt. Yeah. But if I'm feeling guilt and responsibility and bad, which feels awkward, uncomfortable, worrisome, anxious, that's what that's going to do. This isn't going to do that. This is going to do that. Who am I buying the flowers for? And then the people will usually say, you're buying flowers for you, or getting flowers for you to give your mom. Why am I doing that? To relieve awkward emotions in my body. So as soon as that happens, I now become compulsive, an addict. Because what I just told my body and my system is when you have awkward emotions in your body, is go grab outside things to deal with awkward feelings. Booze, sex, drugs, money, any kind of compulsivity, Bluebell ice cream, compulsive vacuuming, workaholism, which is worse than alcoholism to a family system, by the way. And so my whole life, how do I deal with awkward emotions? Well, I don't even deal with my emotions or my feelings anymore because they're too awkward. So what I do is outside things and bring them either into my body or experience outside things to somehow upgrade myself. Over here, I didn't have to upgrade myself. I just owned it, awkwardness and all. But I understood it. Over here, I didn't understand it. Matter of fact, I was guilty and responsible and felt bad, and I was marked, measured, and weighed. And what was that also as a physical reinforcer is when my dad came home and my mom told about how bad a day she had, and he looked at us with his guilt and his own responsibility that he's transferred over to us. In other words, we now carry his shame about the situation he's in with his relationship with his own wife, and makes us feel responsible for something he should be responsible for. And so acts of violence now can pursue. Okay, so hopefully you caught that. It's a pretty long video, so I'm probably will divide it up into 3. And hopefully you can understand what I'm saying, because my voice, as you can tell, is really screwed. Listen, you guys are very important to me. Not because you're following me, just because you are. And most of this stuff no one ever explained to me, as much as I have lots of great academic books. Most of this stuff I learned by deep reflection and trusting me. Trusting myself, learning a different way, learning about living life, not being driven through life, through guilt and responsibility. Okay, so I really hope you guys can really pick up what I'm trying to show you here on this 3 little mini-part series, I guess. And again, I can't thank you guys enough for watching the channel and stuff. Trust your process. Be curious about what comes out of you, even if it feels awkward. It's just like here, all you're going to do is go back to your default folder of when you had the freedom to do that, to experience it. It'll take you a bit to negotiate this part. And the way you do it is do that assignment. One day this week, say no to every request that comes in. You can always come back and say, I thought about that, and actually I can fit it in. But the reason that you do it that way is you have a choice. A lot of us will say yes way too fast and then be pissed off at ourselves that we booked out our weekend when we thought, I just wanted the weekend off. But I can't say no. I must move forward. I must do. Don't do anymore. Be. Practice. Do some little tests with society. Do some tests with your friends. They'll understand. Okay? Have a great week, you guys. We'll talk to you soon.